Dave Mays, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Tyler. I'm a huge fan of this show, so it's always an honor to be on.
Oh, I'm a huge fan of every time we get to talk. We're still talking over each other. I don't know if there's a delay here, but I guess I'll edit it out afterwards. So you haven't been on for a little while. Last time was episode, I don't know, somebody check what episode was Dave on last time. But I had a tweet this week that I don't introduce my guests well enough. So I'll take that critique seriously, and let's have a proper introduction, Dave. We know each other through YouTube. You've been changing up what you're doing on YouTube lately, so we'll go into that just a little bit. And we had a chance to hang out in Vegas recently, which is going to be a lot of the topic of the show. But tell me a little more about what do you do? How did you end up doing what it is?
Oh my gosh, yeah, Vegas was a blast, dude. And thank you, by the way, for coming to the In-N-Out hangout that I hosted. You and your lovely wife, Anya, came, and we just had a great old time. How late did you guys stay after we left? Because I left after 2 hours, and you guys were still there.
Oh, like 20 more minutes. But I heard, okay. I just talked to somebody that stayed the rest of the night, and apparently it went till 3 a.m. So I think I left at just the right time. Yeah. Not at In-N-Out the whole time. They went somewhere else. I don't know.
It's so amazing when things become physical from the internet. You know, I just put a thing out, and it was just like, hey, come, if you want to have a burger with me, come on over. And some people came, and you came, and it was a ton of fun. So it's pretty cool.
Well, and also, I mean, speaking of doing things in person, this was the first. Well, we're skipping. See, I am bad at introducing people. You're already getting me into the topic here.
I think it's because, we're two podcast hosts.
Who's hosting who now? But okay, first, as quickly as you can, who are you and what do you do?
Who are you? My name is Dave Mays. I started as a magician primarily when I was a teenager. I did magic professionally for 8 years. Like legitimately, I was an illusionist. I worked at like 4 different restaurants a week, and I cut my teeth like doing that, but then also went on the road and worked with other magicians. I actually met Peter McKinnon on my 21st birthday in Vegas at Magic Live, way before YouTube Peter McKinnon. It was like Magic Peter McKinnon. So that's a fun little factoid. I still haven't connected that link with him because I still haven't met him since I've become a YouTuber and since he has. Met my wife through Magic. She was a hostess. And then I started doing video production around the time of the DSLR revolution. Started with weddings primarily, and then that transitioned to documentary films. I had a film get a Vimeo staff pick when I was like in my early 20s. That really launched my career, and started working with production companies here in Nashville. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. And then after doing the kind of director thing, I got kind of bored of working with clients and started a YouTube channel inspired by Casey Neistat. And then by a stroke of luck, a company reached out to me and offered me a full-time job to host their channel, which was originally called Kinotika. I did that for about 3.5 years, and then was offered a job to host a channel called Indie Mogul in Los Angeles. Did that for 6 months. That's the last time we spoke. I was kind of just getting started with that the last time we spoke. And that was a total dream job. I had a ton of fun. But after about 6 months, my wife and I decided that we wanted to move home back to Nashville due to really just personal reasons. It wasn't a place that I wanted to live and raise my family. I have 2 boys, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. My parents live here in Nashville. So since then, life has been great. My marriage is better. My relationship with my kids is better. I feel like a healthier person. And I'm just ready to get back in there, and starting now on my new channel, Dave Mays, just my normal just name. I'm not working for Kinotika anymore. I'm not doing Indie Mogul anymore. Just Dave Mays.
The same actual channel, I believe, right? So if people were subscribed to Kinotika, they are currently subscribed to Dave Mays. No need to double subscribe. Because then if they click it again, then they'll unsubscribe and not realize it. So don't do that.
That's true.
If you subscribe to Kinotika, you already got it figured out.
Exactly. Yeah. I got lucky and reached out to the owners of Kinotika, and they gave me the brand. They gave me the company, and I changed the name to Dave Mays. So all those older videos from 3-4 years ago are there, the 250 videos or whatever I did, which is great. It gave me a nice head start. My buddy Connor McCaskill, who worked with me during that whole time, is back with me again. We're shooting new stuff. I'm really excited. And going to NAB like yourself this last week really just gave me a lot of motivation and excitement to kind of just get back in the game. And it's just, as you know, it's just so much fun being around other creators and other people that are interested in all this nerdy stuff, because in our normal day-to-day lives, we are pretty goofy people. I literally went to the aquarium and went to like a Thomas the Tank Engine thing with my family today, carrying my C70 everywhere, like using it as a home video camera. And my wife was like,
I mean, I think
why are you
should.
carrying that around?
If you've got one, why would you want to look back at your home videos and they're all shot on the iPhone? You'd be like, but I had a good camera. Why didn't I make my kids' childhood look like a movie? So yeah, no, I think that's the right move.
Well, I am baking it in. I'm using
that leads us
I'm
back
shooting
into
it in wide DR. I'm not shooting Canon Log 2, unfortunately. But
well, I mean, I'm sure it still looks great. But that leads us back into what I was about to say about this trip to Vegas, is that this was one of the first like bigger events I've done since I've really been like deeper into YouTube. But the only time I'd met a lot of other YouTubers before was Camera Camp, which is pretty close to like pre-COVID. Like it was one of the last things that happened. And so that was cool. I got to meet a lot of people for the first time there and make some friends, but anybody that wasn't there, I haven't met. And I didn't see any of those people any other time anywhere, because after that, not much has happened for 2 years. So, and also I was repeating this to everybody I saw at NAB, but there was this feeling of that as NAB was happening right as everything got canceled. Like we had our tickets booked. We were going to Coachella, then NAB. None of those things happened. So now having gone back to it is sort of this full circle moment of like, I don't know, feeling like things are coming back to life a little bit. But yeah, also getting to meet people for the first time that I've since gotten to know on the internet and had on the podcast, and actually got to hang out with in person a bunch. And I don't know, it was awesome. I took a bunch of selfies. They're on Instagram and Twitter if anybody wants to see them. And I don't know. I mean, anybody that wasn't there, it's not that interesting to recount the stuff that you missed. So I would rather talk a bit more about like what was good there and what implications are we gonna have going down the road for the next year or two in terms of video production, also how it applies to photo production. Just like, what do we now know about tech that we didn't know before we showed up there? I didn't pick a place to start. I didn't take notes. So do you have a jumping off point you'd like to start with?
I do, Tyler. I do.
Oh,
and by the way,
I brought you on.
in the chat, somebody mentioned that my audio is dropping out. So I apologize. I am on Wi-Fi. I have fiber and I've got 5G, so it should be good. But when Tyler edits the podcast, it should sound clean and perfect. So
it'll be perfect eventually.
Yeah. It might be not super interesting to people, but I think there's something to talk about and something to take away from cloud recording. That seemed to be, if I were to like summarize what I saw at NAB and what the announcements were, I feel like the future of this cloud backup and sync thing is really happening now. I remember listening to an interview with the creator of Frame.io a couple of years ago on like a Final Cut podcast, and he was pitching this concept, 3 or 4 years ago. It's kind of like the CEO of Netflix basically saying like, yeah, the future is going to be streaming, but right now we have to mail out DVDs to get there. Whereas like with Frame.io 4 or 5 years ago, I think the CEO of the company, he saw the future and he's like, there's going to be a box on a camera or even an LTE chip built into the camera so that every time a DP is operating the thing and hitting record, it's constantly being uploaded to the cloud so that an editor can literally be editing live as the shoot is happening. We're still not fully there yet, but we're pretty dang close now, and it's starting to look pretty exciting. Canon released some firmware updates that enable this, and then Blackmagic and Frame are both doing a lot of this stuff. So I think it's pretty cool. What do you think about it?
Well, yeah. Did you look at the Atomos booth and the way that they're doing it? Because that looks like if it works reliably, then it might be here. Like there could be a workflow right now where you're hitting record and it is going direct to the editor into an NLE. But you started off by saying you don't know how interesting this will be to people. And I would actually be really curious to know that, like how many people is this important to? Because I only feel like it got important to me later in my career when I was able to have a remote editor. Like which I don't think that's extremely common. How many people have somebody working on files that are out of reach of being able to get them to drive? Obviously, there will be more of those people as it becomes more accessible and like the ability to just collaborate remotely. It'll happen because we can. So I don't know. Even if people don't realize they're interested in it, like if they don't have that interest currently, it's probably going to kick in pretty soon because it's just going to let us do something we couldn't do before, right? Well, all of a sudden, there's completely new opportunities. So from what I was seeing, I wasn't able to like dive into the specifics of the workflow of any of them, of like, you know, how am I really going to do this? For example, the Atomos thing. So is Atomos Connect, I believe is the name of it. And it's a backpack that goes on a Ninja. So a lot of people out there already have Ninjas and are recording with them. And this is just a little add-on to it for an extra $300. I think you have to, well, they had it plugged into Ethernet, probably works over Wi-Fi too. But every time you hit record now, which it's saving the, say, ProRes files right into the hard drive connected to it, but it's also sending proxies wirelessly to Frame.io. Yeah, they're using Frame. Because, yeah, I was trying to remember. They're using Frame.io. Blackmagic is using Dropbox. So there's like different ways that all of these work. And then the missing piece in my head is that in the demonstration, they had the Frame.io plugin running in Final Cut, and it was loading the proxies in like right into the project, and then you could drop them in. But this is something I'm not aware of in Final Cut, where you could start editing with the proxies like first, never having put in original data. What I see in Final Cut is that it only you always need to like import originals and then connect the proxy. So I don't know how it's working, but it made for a cool demo.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I don't know if I think you're right on that, but I'm sure Apple will change that. We both may be ignorant in that there may be a proxy only workflow, because I'm sure there's people that are handed a drive that's just full of proxies and people start editing, I'm sure. But anyways, I think it's interesting mostly for the higher end, because I mean, think of a reality TV show like The Bachelor or like Survivor. If there's 5 cameramen, filming constantly, I can't imagine the headache of editing and working on a project like that. The amount of producers that are required, the amount of transcriptions that are probably required of all that stuff, and then having to somehow craft a story out of all this crazy stuff. So even if it's not editing, I feel like for a reality TV show, if the footage is constantly being uploaded to the cloud, they can immediately start transcribing the footage so that the producers can start editing. And I would imagine in that kind of workflow, it's probably going to be great. Also I would assume for films, it'll be helpful too in a lot of ways. But often the way filmmaking is done in the traditional sense, like the director, once the shoot is finished, the director sits in a room with an editor. So, I don't know if getting the footage earlier really necessarily helps, but
I know that in a commercial context, it's definitely helpful when the client can be remote and observing what's happening without having to be on set. Something I was talking about last week that is already here is that ability to do that kind of work with Capture One, which I have used on some recent shoots. It's just called Capture One Live. And it's doing that same thing of like as the computer photos are being downloaded to the computer, it's generating proxies that go into a web app. And what we had was our client couldn't make it in, like she was out of town. So we just sent her a URL, super basic, and she can load it in any web browser, see the live files, like seconds after they're shot, they appear in front of her, and she could rate them and, either by number or color or whatever. And it was incredibly helpful just for that bit of awareness that she'd send a text to be like, oh, by the way, we need this combination of that product with that one. So being able to have that same sort of workflow in terms of video so that somebody can be, just managing a shot list and checking things off as you go and having more awareness around anybody that is part of the set, whether they're physically or not. I can see a lot of applications for it. And don't even know if it's going to be integrated into the ways that we're working right now, but we're about to find a lot of new ways for it. Then the way Blackmagic was doing it is quite different. That is really that editor focused version, which is like as you create the project and you load everything in there, it's just all available to anyone. So they have some hardware solutions that can do this live. So if you buy one of those beautiful Blackmagic boxes, which range from like $300 up to like $20,000. I mean, you can spend as much as you want on it. Those are automatically generating the proxies and managing everything for you, but you can also do it manually. So you could just import everything and then like click the button and send it to somebody. But the result in the end, once all the footage is in there, is that you and your editors, I think up to 10 editors, can be editing the same timeline at the same time. I don't know how conflict management works with that, but I did have a chance to speak to one of the more senior people at Blackmagic for about half an hour and just kind of like go over why'd you do this and how does it work? And I mean, it's incredibly compelling. That idea of like group editing, or, a colorist is working on it at the same time as an edit is happening and it can manage those conflicts. If they get it right, I mean, it'd be pretty cool.
That's really cool. Although I imagine as an editor myself, like if you're trying to edit something sort of live, you kind of, what do you expect them to do? Like just kind of sit there with a cup of coffee and just like wait for stuff to show up before they can, like, if they edit a certain segment and then it's like, all right, well, nothing's uploaded. It's been about an hour. Like that sounds like more of a waste of time than,
because if there's something that's kind of like live coverage, where it's same day turnaround. Let's actually, a fun example would be a wedding where you are doing a same day turnaround. And if you have an editor nearby, and there's a Wi-Fi network and I don't know, it's going straight to them, you could have it at the end of the day.
Yeah, totally. Well, I did that for a video coming up. So.
Oh, well, so you know,
shot
all
on the
it.
ZV-1 too. It'll be fun.
Oh, nice. So there was the cloud. I think its moment is about to come. We're just kind of getting to the beginning of it. I'm not really going to embrace it until it's gotten a little bit further.
I think this is the key reason why Adobe bought it, because I think they're seeing into the future here. And once this whole thing is cracked and we're right on the edge of it, the precipice of it, I think once this becomes a reality and it becomes part of the workflow, this may change filmmaking and productions forever. And by Adobe owning the whole platform, I would assume that, they're going to make a lot of money off of it somehow. So, obviously, Blackmagic does their thing, as always, and they're not willing to work with anyone else. So, but
one thing I was confused about was that so Adobe had announced just before NAB that all Creative Cloud members now get free access to Frame.io. Sounds amazing. Like, that's really cool.
And I didn't know that.
Yeah, I just found out going up to their booth. I hadn't even heard that. And it's true. I checked it. But what I couldn't figure out is that I was only able to use it when I would log in through Premiere. Like if I opened the Frame.io interface in Premiere, log in with my same email as my Creative Cloud. It was like, great, here you go. You can do all this Frame.io stuff. But if I go to the website, it's still just showing me that I only have like a few projects and 2 terabytes available. Like I don't have the proper account that it says I should. So
maybe they're forcing you to use
I haven't
Adobe
quite figured out
instead of Final
yeah,
Cut or
that's
whatever.
what I'm a little worried about. And reading the splash page, just kind of, pitching it.
Yeah.
They don't clarify that. They don't say like, oh, you get the full Frame.io, the full web interface or anything like that.
Gotcha.
I don't know. I got to figure that out still, but
it's like the Cinema 4D thing. It comes with it, but it's not really the full one, and it's confusing and annoying. But
yeah.
What do you think about Resolve? Like, you and I are Final Cut guys, and I've been talking to a lot of people, and at NAB, I talked to a couple people and people who were on Final Cut, and they're like, no, dude, I'm on Resolve, and it's awesome. So, that saying of like, you want to bet, you don't bet on the horse, you bet on the jock, or the jockey, not the jock.
I mean, but if you're betting on sports, you're probably betting on jocks. That's pretty reliable.
But like, if you were to think about each company in threes, let's obviously exclude Avid, but like Adobe has their own thing, but Premiere is just so clunky. Final Cut is great, but Apple is just distracted and has so many other things that they care about. And then Blackmagic is just like constantly updating things, making it better. just pushing the envelope in all areas. Like, what are your thoughts? I know you've been using Resolve a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I've been using Resolve a lot for a while, specifically for color. So often it's that I'm just going into there and working with some recent footage and like generating LUTs that I then use in Final Cut. There's very few projects I've been able to grade in Resolve because the workflow, it's not fast. Well, no, of moving back and forth, it's just there's a lot of like wasted time in it. And for things like YouTube, it doesn't make any sense. You kind of have to be in a situation where there's real picture lock, like the edit is done and it's not changing. And that's not really how I edit. There's very often last minute requests. And so yeah, that's not really conducive to that style of workflow. So Resolve is still sort of this other thing for me. It's like a color playground. It's not an NLE. And that's becoming a dumber way to work gradually. Like I've talked about it a few times on the podcast already, but about that, the color managed workflow, when you do it properly in Resolve, really just sells you on, like, this is the way it should be. This is 100% how log footage should be handled. We should not be thinking about trying to find a good transform LUT from a YouTuber that we like. We should be able to put it through a color managed pipeline with software that understands what you're looking at and then allows all of your adjustments to be contextual to that log footage. So, it would be like if right now, the way that it is, say you're doing your color in either Final Cut or even Premiere, it's when you have log footage, you're using like kind of blunt instrument tools. Whereas like in, if you edit a photo in Lightroom or Capture One, you drag the exposure slider, it looks like the exposure is going up and down as if you adjusted it on the camera, right? If you know what it looks like if you increase or decrease the ISO. And it's not the same as grabbing one of the highlights or the gamma curves and like bringing those up. That doesn't look the same as adjusting exposure because you end up clipping highlights. You end up changing the saturation. When you're color managed in Resolve, it understands what exposure is. And as you bring it up, it appropriately compensates all the highlights, shadows, and saturation to feel accurate in the same way that a camera exposure change does. And the only way to do that right now is with a tool like that color managed workflow. There's some other attempts to do it, like some plugins like Filmbox in Resolve or the other film one that is in all the platforms Film Convert. They have a little bit of it built in.
And then even for us too, us Canon shooters, it handles the RAW really well for Canon stuff. Although I never shoot RAW. So
right. Yeah.
It's nice when you have it.
We haven't talked. Yeah, I haven't talked about that.
I want to hear your thoughts on the C70 RAW. Like, I had you on my show on the Golden Hour podcast, and we were kind of like
about it on here.
Have you talked about it?
No, yeah, I don't think I did. Because I just had a whole bunch of conversations at NAB, and I'm like, was any of this on the podcast? I don't think it was. Okay, so the thing
that happened to me a couple times. I told the same thing to multiple people. I'm like, have I told you this already? And they're like, no. And I'm like, oh, well, I've said this 5 times now, but
just listen to the podcast. You'll get it all. Okay. So the thing is, I've done the tests in RAW just enough for me to understand it. And I really like the way that it's implemented. It's amazing that it shoots to SD cards. That's incredible. And the fact that it's extremely compressed, I think is actually great. That is much more useful than giant RAW files that Canon has traditionally done. So now, I mean, for context, like it's, I don't remember the fraction. It is a fraction of the size of the C200, which already was much better than certain other Canons like the R5. The RAW files are enormous. And I mean, that's the best example. Actually, the R5 RAW files are way bigger than they need to be. And meanwhile, other brands like Blackmagic have been able to provide 12K RAW that is super compressed and very editable and looks amazing, and you're not losing any image quality. So seeing Canon finally start implementing that kind of thing with C70 is great. What I found was that I didn't get the jump in image quality that I have seen elsewhere, like on the C200, for example. The difference in 8-bit and RAW was enormous. Like you could save a lot more detail. But Basically, what you're able to save is saturation in the highlights. So as you're overexposing and you bring it down, you don't have more dynamic range. Like if it's clipped, it's still clipped, but there's more color information. So that's especially useful if your skies are, those are what are almost clipping, and that you can bring some of that blue back that you couldn't before. Skin tones, it gets less thin as it gets too bright. You can keep some of the richness in it. But it's not as big of a difference as I had anticipated. I thought it was going to be a little bit more.
Yeah, I love the 10-bit on the C70, the 422 10-bit. I switched completely to the HEVC mode too, just to save size, because I'm rocking a M1 Max computer now, so it just cuts through it no problem. It's just so convenient and tiny and easy. So I don't know, but we have our little basic YouTuber lifestyle. So
yeah, no, it's true. Have you shot with it? Like, did you update the camera and everything?
I did. I updated it.
Okay.
Played around with it a little bit here in the studio, just literally just this shot here, and just played around with it a bit. The Canon app that they have, the RAW app, is just garbage. And so I played around in that and then brought it into Final Cut. I know you can bring it into Final Cut, but you don't get any of the raw stuff. So I don't even know how to use Resolve really at all. So I didn't try that because I don't know what I'm doing.
You would still see some advantages in Final Cut. Effectively, it would be letting you work with 12-bit footage instead of 10-bit. So
Sure.
that's great.
So.
I mean, it is a real improvement. It does offer you a little more flexibility, but RAW matters when you're in an environment that, well, especially if you're going to do something like VFX, but most of all, if you are in something that's very uncontrolled and it's likely that you're going to make mistakes, like you know that your white balance could end up being 1,000K off and you're going to have to fix it. Then I'm happy when it's RAW, because there's no punishment for it. Right?
Totally.
And then that can save you time during production because you don't have to get the white balances accurate in the first place. So, that's the argument for using it. But
R3D is just so good.
Right. Yeah. And I mean,
anything else is trash.
Yeah. Red's done it so well for so long that, because their files don't have to be very big to really offer a lot of flexibility. They look really good without being enormous. So, so basically we are kind of at that point with Canon now where we can, and kind of everyone, maybe not everyone, Sony, I don't know what Sony RAW is like if you record to an external recorder, but Blackmagic, Red, Canon,
Panasonic
RAW, but it's not internal.
No, they do ProRes RAW. I think Sony does ProRes RAW too. Are they doing
Panasonic does
Sony
ProRes, just ProRes internal, but not ProRes RAW internal. So,
are you referring specifically to internal? I was talking about the Atomos solution.
Yeah, so I just don't even. I mean, you're technically right about that. It's so inconvenient, the idea of me of counting on your external recorder that we set up. We hired actors, we built a set, we have wardrobe, but if this cable comes loose, I can't record anything. That's not real to me. Like, you are betting the farm on, a doomed, cables break, cables come unplugged. There's a million reasons. Do not trust cables. So,
I'm pretty
external
sure
RAW to me is it's like a novelty feature.
I'm pretty sure some of the early Alexas to do RAW, you did have to do it externally, but they were using SDI cables, which are way more robust. So
yes, yeah. I mean, and in that case, it is a different scenario. And I mean, Alexa doesn't even need RAW. Alexa,
no, it doesn't.
So,
there's plenty of movies that were shot in 1080p ProRes that look amazing.
Yeah, for sure. This episode is brought to you by Microsoft Lists. If you have anything to keep track of, like maybe running a YouTube channel, then Microsoft Lists has you covered. Are you looking for a new way to track and manage your work and life from start to finish? Well, Microsoft Lists is here to help you clear your brain space and get organized. And it all starts at lists.live.com. Microsoft kicked off a preview of the program to try Lists with your Microsoft account. All the software is designed for small businesses and individual users, so you can start by creating and sharing your lists with your work colleagues, your partners, your teammates, your neighbors. You might want to create a list of books or movies or monthly meetings. You can track your home improvements, which I certainly will be doing. At lists.live.com, you can quickly start with ready-made templates using filters and views to visualize your information, which means you can have one list with many views. Then you can share your lists as links to get other people's thoughts and work together. You can do a lot with lists, either with the ready-made templates or just start from scratch. So you could keep track of event itineraries, or maybe if you have a big trip to Europe coming up, you can make notes about everything that you want to do or what you need to pack. You can collect receipts. There are so many different applications. I don't need to explain them to you because you know how powerful lists can be. So go and try the preview right now at no cost. Go to your browser and type in lists.live.com. That's lists.live.com, and you can sign up, sign in, and track what matters most. Check it out and let Microsoft know what you like and if you have any feature requests. So thanks to Microsoft for supporting the show.
Back to NAB, just to like wrap that up with a bow. Aputure freaking crushed it. I feel like, so just to put this out there, disclaimer, Ted is a very close friend of mine. I worked with him directly with Indie Mogul, with Aputure. So all that, disclaimer there. I do have a bias because I am a friend of Ted's and a big fan of Aputure. That being said, I think even as being as objective as possible, nobody's really coming close to what they're doing. It's really exciting because they're actually taking like lighting technology and really pushing it to the next level, and finally kind of tapping into the true like cinema level of things, and starting to fill out their lineup outside of the prosumer kind of affordable stuff, but still making it affordable compared to like a Sky Panel or the Airy options. So I know they're working with some really incredible filmmakers, and like they've officially cracked into Hollywood now, which is really cool to see Aputure alongside Airy, like in terms of reputation in Hollywood. I don't really care personally, and I think a lot of YouTubers probably don't care. That's why we're YouTubers and not, pursuing the Hollywood career path. But it's exciting nonetheless, and it's pretty cool. And Ted has been at the helm of that, and he's done a fabulous job. So they've got some new tubes that are using some really intense LED technology. Like the pixels are like extremely small, I guess, apparently. Like it hasn't been done before, apparently. That's what they said. And then the 600C, is that it? The C Pro. It's
you're missing some letter there. C Pro sounds right.
Yeah, it's like it's a 600 watt. It's a very bright light that also does very bright and extremely accurate RGB lighting. And Ted actually brought up a good point when he talked about it. He said that a lot of this technology has come from like just standard kind of hardware, like stage lighting and stuff like that. Nothing has been really specifically designed for filmmaking with high CRI levels with RGB in particular. And so, I mean, that's why Sky Panels have been such a huge hit for so long, because they're extremely accurate and very good at what they do. So now this is kind of hitting above the weight of a Sky Panel now for like half the price. So pretty exciting stuff. And I'm excited, I'm anticipating more from Aputure as they continue to grow in the industry.
Well, and as anybody tells me that has spent time testing the Sky Panels, they actually have a terrible CRI, like extremely lower than most modern lights that we work with. And
they're old.
Aputure's been outperforming them with everything since they started their RGB lineup. There's a just better overall color rendering. And, Hollywood's slow to move, so they're not going to start replacing them anytime soon. But the actual performance of the modern RGB WW stuff coming from Aputure seems to be better, which is amazing, and at a much better price point and more intuitive design. Like I really like the way that Aputure designs. So yeah, There's a reason that they've got all this momentum, and they're not, after having dominated the YouTuber space, are now really a serious presence on sets more and more so in a way that was challenging for them before. But they absolutely are being taken seriously in the same way as others.
And they're kind of one more thing too, is their new app. I think it's the Citus DMX app. They're now working with every other like lighting company, so you can have your Aputure lights Yeah, you can have your Aputure lights like sync to it, but then you can literally sync your sky panels and your NAN lights and like everything. Like somehow, I guess they're reverse engineering that, or I don't know if it's an open standard, but they're basically just saying, hey, you know what? Like just use our app and we'll work with whatever you got. So now you can control all your lights depending. It's not dependent on the light manufacturer.
Crazy. Yeah, that's great.
They have their own engineers and developers in-house now, which is completely new from when I used to work there a year ago. They didn't have any app developers, so that's only happened in the last year. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, they've just really thought of things from like a pretty. I feel like a lot of this vision had to have already been there. Like they just have this awareness of where they want to go. And before moving away from the RGB thing to one more thing, I want to talk about more and more, and I want to spend some time with is that RGB. I was more skeptical about it until recently. Especially spending some more time with what was the name of the new panels that I just tested? The F22X. No, X is bicolor. So F22C is the one that is RGB. But like whenever you can, getting the RGB version of anything is the right move because of being able to have like a good green magenta compensation, because being able to dial in to match the other lights around you is so incredibly helpful, and just having bicolor isn't necessarily enough. So what I really want to start doing, again, this is one of those like, did I say it on the show or in a video or whatever? I want to start event someday. I want to get like a good Sekonic spectrometer that has tells you everything about the color that you're currently measuring, and start matching my other sources all by dialing in XY color coordinates, so that, because, outside the sun, sure, you've got sunlight, but what might actually be coming through the window isn't coming from the sun. It's bouncing off the lawn and coming up through the window. So there's probably a green shift, or it's bouncing off the building across the street and it's blue and it's, cooling it down or whatever. There's always something that is contaminating that daylight in an indoor situation or any situation. There's some level of shifting, and being able to match exactly is pretty amazing. It's something I want to experiment with myself. I don't have all the tools to do it yet, but I want, that should be standard soon. Like that should start being where we all are moving towards in the pretty near future, where like everything is, it's not this like, oh, I set my camera to the daylight setting, so I also set my light to daylight, and now they should match, but they don't match. I mean, that happens all the time that they don't match, and drives me crazy. So hopefully we're going to get there soon. One thing I really liked at another booth, so Nanlite did their bulbs to compete with the B7. I don't remember the ones from Aputure, but that's the one I have is Aputure. The Nanlite ones, what I really like is that they actually are shaped like bulbs. So if you see it somewhere in the frame, it looks a little bit more realistic. That's one nice thing.
Instead of the
even
futuristic
better,
Aputure ones.
they had this
the
little
B7C.
propeller. Oh, yeah, there's the name. I was going to say C, but I'm like, oh, yeah, because it is RGB, isn't it? Anyway, okay, so the Nanlite ones come with, this accessory is actually the most exciting part. It looks like a little propeller, and it's just a circle with a suction cup on top. And you can twist it to allow different amounts of light in and out. The reason this is really helpful is the main reason that I use those light bulbs is to put it in a lamp that's behind me to have it controlled, right? Usually it's like most regular tungsten bulbs are too bright for cinema because it's going to blow out compared to your key. But so you take this little hat for the light, you suction cup it onto the top, and it blocks a lot of that light from coming up out of the top of the lamp, which is every time I put a bulb in a lamp, it's a problem because all the light is spilling up and hitting the wall beside it, and the wall starts to clip, which is not what you're trying to do here at all, right? Like you just want this gentle glow from behind. So it lets you control exactly how much is coming out of that open top of the lamp. So super specific, but
interesting.
I just fell in love with it. So
I think they call it the Nanlite Pavo bulb 10C. Is that it?
That sounds right.
Okay.
But it was interesting. They just had such a different approach from what Aputure did. Like, I'm glad they're not copying each other exactly, and that they're both willing to experiment. Because another thing is like they don't have batteries included. The Aputure, it has a built-in battery, so if you just leave it plugged in for a while, then it's going to be able to run without any power. With the Nanlite versions, you have to get another battery pack thing to make it go. So,
You know what's funny is I'm sitting here talking about Aputure, talking about Nanlite, all these great companies, and I just want to remind the listeners of the show that like some of those lights are expensive. You can still get by with cheap stuff, because I'm looking around here and like off to my left is a Yongnu light. It's like one of those little lightsaber looking things.
right.
I think Caleb Pike recommended that a couple of years ago. I'm still using that. I've got, these little, you ever seen these little, things? It's like, what's it called? From Spiffy Gear. They
I've
sent
never
these
heard
to
of
me.
Spiffy Gear.
Spiffy Gear. They're from Israel. But yeah, like
Cool.
they sync. So I've got 2 here and then 2 here, and there's like a cable that routes to both of them. And as you can see, it's controlling both sets of them, which is kind of fun. But these
That's
aren't
cool.
that expensive. So
Yeah,
like,
no,
I don't have any
I'm totally with
expensive
you.
stuff.
Same with
And that's why Aputure's doing the cheaper line now too, because you can get away with cheaper stuff too.
Yeah, they've been splitting it out to Amaran in a way that I actually find a little confusing from a brand perspective. Like how it seems like they want to split them more and more. And I'm a little like, is this called the
Yeah.
Amaran blah, blah, blah light? But,
Yeah.
but also,
I think it is. I think they want it to be
Yeah.
a different brand, because I think they're trying to keep Aputure into the high-end cinema world,
Yes. Yeah,
So
that's fine. But so
fine.
also looking for cheap stuff. I mean, Godox has been there the whole
Yep.
time and are remarkably affordable and offer competitive options for pretty much all of it. But I mean, it's also just always amazing how good these prices are compared to what we had to pay just a couple of years ago. So like, whatever light you couldn't afford last time, spend the same amount of money and you're going to get something better. So yeah, it's not a bad time to buy lighting, much better than it used to be.
Totally. It's not a bad time to buy anything. The freaking Macs are better than they've ever been. Like I still get tickled with excitement how freaking good my laptop is now. It's like I could never imagine power in a laptop, and not only that, but a freaking XDR screen. Like it's so good. The whole thing is amazing. I can't and it's got an SD card slot. Oh my gosh.
So which
Why
one
am I
are
still
you
talking
using?
about it?
What model did you get? Like, what are the details?
I have a 16-inch MacBook Pro M1 Max. It's just it is maxed out all the way.
It's the exact
so all
same
the way
as what
down.
I'm using right here. So,
And it's
but yeah,
silver
no,
too.
it's like it really does feel kind of life changing in terms of like what you can get done in a day and what the pain points are and
And the battery life. I had a 4-hour flight home, from Vegas, and I used it the entire time editing the video that I posted this morning, and I think I had 70% when I landed in Nashville. A 4-hour flight.
Yeah, so good.
It's insane, dude. It's
Yeah,
really
no,
amazing.
I know that I'm a broken squeaky wheel about this. Like I just keep talking about it. I can't shut up about how great these are, but like,
Yeah.
I feel like when good stuff comes along, it's good to stay excited about it for a while. We're so
Yeah, I'm still excited.
so much of tech is getting jaded and finding something to complain about. And it's like, you know what? Phones are amazing. Cameras are amazing. Like all this tech is just so good right now.
100%.
And it's still worth the more I like something, the more I'm going to complain about what I think could be improved about it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but you can at the same time be grateful for how powerful it is and all of the things that you're able to do with it. So
yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I try to keep some of that perspective.
What else? NAB to me at the end of the day was the people. Like we said earlier, like just hanging out and talking to people. Like they kind of stopped releasing stuff at NAB a couple years ago, to be honest. I feel like trade shows are sort of on their way out in a way, at least not how it was 6 years ago. And that's okay. Like the internet allows us to, receive a new product whenever the product's done. Like it doesn't have to be at a trade show. The only reason it was at trade shows is because that's when journalists would all show up and write about stuff in articles. But now with the internet, talk about slow to catch up. Like these companies know, we could just send the camera to a bunch of creators and they'll make a review for free. So it's just a different market now. And Sony just releases stuff whenever they feel like it, whenever it's ready. Canon seems to drag their feet a little bit, but they also release stuff, it seems, whenever they're ready. So Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that. I think it's fine. It makes NAB a little less exciting, and I think the justification for you, if you want to go to NAB in the future, you should have the expectation that you're not going to see something new. You're really going to hang out with like-minded people, to meet other creators, to meet maybe even a future client. You know, I remember going to NAB 7-8 years ago and meeting people that ended up, it's like, oh, you live in Nashville? Cool. What do you do? Oh, you're a producer? Cool. Yeah. I mean, I'm a DP. Like, I'd love to work with you. And I end up becoming friends with people like at NAB. So, anyways.
Well, another thing about it that it provides, for me at least, is that there's not many times that I have a chance to interact with other people that do the exact same thing as me, because when we're at work, there's only one cinematographer on the set. You know, like I'm not hanging out with other people that do my job. So I'm not getting their input on how they do it, or hearing what I, could be. I mean, I still hear what I could be doing better from like the other people around me, but it's really helpful to talk to just peers that have the same level of enthusiasm about very similar things. And all of a sudden it can like totally shift your perspective on, like, it'll often just be some little tip that somebody slipped in a conversation of like, oh, you're pre-rendering your XYZ, and it sticks in your head and you're like, oh wow, like this is a new way of doing my workflow. And so it's sometimes hard to pin down the thing that is most helpful about being there, but it's definitely something that comes out of the conversations. But speaking of Sony, you mentioned Sony. I haven't tried it. I haven't watched any reviews, but I was just excited that they did announce that new 24-70 to 8.
Because they didn't release it at NAB. They did it after.
It was after. I thought it was around. I mean, but I didn't see it there or anything. So
no, I know, which is kind of a bummer. I would have loved to have seen it. They released it right after NAB was over a couple days ago, but it's lighter, it's smaller, it's sharper. It's got the click and declick switch on it. It's got buttons on it. It's got an aperture ring. I'm starting to realize, like, holy crap, Sony's making good stuff, and they keep making it, and they keep advancing, and they're actually listening to the users of it. They're adding features that we want, with the exception of the everybody's like, hey Sony, when are you going to update the A7S and the FX3 with some of the things that are in the A7 IV, like the focus mode and the, what is it, it turns off the focus breathing compensation thing. Everybody seems to really love that feature, and it kind of makes sense for that to be on the A7S, since the A7S is a cinema camera. But literally everybody, I think there was not a single person in our little sphere of creators that isn't using Sony now, except you and me, right? Like,
I don't know. It depends how broad you like draw why you draw the circle. And also, I don't always know what people are really using all the time, especially people that are reviewing cameras. Like, I don't know what Potato Jet is really using, like what is the whole thing being shot on? Like, it seems to, change. And
I do think he's primarily on Sony, I believe, but it's for good reason. Like, it's small, it's lightweight. The IBIS isn't wobbly, unlike Canon's IBIS.
You were complaining about that to me in your video. I am never bothered by it. Like, really? Kind of know what it is. Like, I look for it and I can find it, but if nobody tells me about it, I just don't. I never notice it. So, but I know everybody else complains. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I used my Olympus when I did. I still have it and still love my Olympus, and I'm kind of just considering buying the new Olympus because I'm talk about like being a solo guy here. Like, nobody uses Olympus, but I'm a huge fan of it. I like the menus. I like they have a whole team of people that work on medical instruments, and they're the ones who design the ergonomics of the camera, which I think is fascinating. So like, it's really comfortable to hold. It's like a small, lightweight kind of system, and their IBIS is insane. But it's Micro Four Thirds, and it's nowhere near as good in dynamic range and low light, obviously. But I don't know. There's just something about it. I love using it to take pictures of my kids and just kind of use it as a tiny little camera. And I think I'm still probably going to just stick with that in my C70, because at the end of the day, the C70 and C-Log 2 at ISO 800 using that DGO sensor. The only thing that comes close to it is the C300 Mark II or the C500, and the C300 has the same sensor in it. So obviously, or not Mark II. What is it? Are we on the Mark III now?
7.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, I don't remember which Mark, but no, it's
you know
true.
what I'm
Same
saying.
sensor. And I've never had that experience with any of my other cameras that, it's just everything I shoot out of it looks right. Like I'm never really screwing it up. As long as I glance at the waveform and things are kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
It comes out great. And I can't say that for other cameras that I really like. So, I mean, I also use the R5. It's, my B camera. I use it less for video, but I expose it wrong often, where usually it's underexposed. So I'm trying to just like always bump it up now, but it's not bulletproof in the same way. Like it's pretty easy to just kind of get it wrong if you're not keeping a close eye on it. And that's how Sony's always were for me as well.
Well, again, so Armando Fiera Connor used to work for Armando, and there was a day like on Sunday at NAB, I told Connor, I was like, hey, let's just take it easy first day. Like, I don't want to shoot anything. I flew, I paid for him to go, and he's working for me, but Armando was like, hey, can I steal him for the day if you're not doing anything? I was like, yeah, sure, I don't care. And so Connor ended up like shooting for Armando that day, made some extra money. But he shot it all in the FX3, and Connor and I are full Canon. He's got an R5 and then I've got a C70. And I looked at the footage that Connor shot with Armando's FX3 and I was like, this looks like Canon now. Like the color science actually looks really good. It's definitely different, but it does not have that garbagey kind of like Sony zombified look that it used to have.
I mean, I think what really mattered was getting out of the 8-bit era. That was,
Yes.
It was dark times. When I go back and I watch anything I was shooting in 8-bit, I'm just like, none of this looks good. Like the colors
Except the
are
C300
always
original or the C100 original was pretty good.
I didn't have it, but yeah, I know other people could make it work for them. But, it's same for Sony now too, of that, like, I don't notice. I was just admitting, like, I don't know what people are shooting on because you see the footage and it's like, oh, that looks great. That also looks great. Oh, I mean, it's how they shoot it. It
all looks
really,
great.
Yeah, and in that point of having something really visibly different that there was before, I think when we were in the 8-bit era, which was long. I mean, we just got out of it. It feels like still, but
yeah,
you had less flexibility later, and you were relying a bit more on what your camera's colors actually were. And that's what you got. And and so that's why the Sony stuff looked weird. And that's why I was like, I was shooting HLG to try to get more dynamic range out of it because S-Log2 looked terrible on 8-bit and blah, blah, blah.
Well, so here's the conversation that I had that kind of made my brain not explode, but kind of be like, oh, shoot. Yeah. Was with a guy named Ken Bolito. Are you familiar with Ken? He's Austin Evans' shooter. Austin Evans is a great creator. And Ken is amazing. He's on Twitter. I've met him at a couple events, and like that for some reason, like we just really clicked this time. We had a great conversation.
I didn't see him. Somebody tell Ken we're talking about him on the podcast so he listens.
Just
because I'd love to talk to Ken someday. I wish I'd met him.
He said they're fully on it, man. They got like 6 or something FX3s and A7Ss, and he literally uses the 16-35 with the FX3 handheld, and they love that handheld aesthetic. Like they used to have full cinema rigs with the FX7, I believe, with like cinema zooms and everything, and they're fully handheld now. And he said something that I really, really love and I want to take forward with my content. And he said, I don't view myself as a shooter filming for Austin Evans. I view myself as talent, and the footage that I'm capturing is a POV of what I'm seeing. And I was like, wow,
that's
that
cool.
is so cool. And that is why YouTube is great.
Mm-hmm.
That's why YouTube is so great. And that's what makes YouTube different than your traditional television show, is that there is this, like, if you think about like Dobrik and what he did with his vlogs, like, however you feel about him now with all the garbage that he's been going through. But like, if you just look at what he did as a filmmaker, like he was basically taking the TV show Friends, but through a POV of what he was seeing. And I think that is kind of the future of our content and the future of YouTube in general. And that's what makes it different. And so Ken, like, he's always got a lav on whenever he's filming, so that way he can have interactions with Austin. And it's a different approach than what, like, you know, obviously another tech YouTuber who's very successful, Marquez Brownlee, does. I mean, to him, it is a red on a tripod, you know, so that's a completely different, and a robot, you know. But I personally love that little touch that that Ken mentioned about, like, everything that he shoots is a POV. He is talent on the show, and it's a POV of his image or of what he's seeing. And by having it be small and lightweight and super portable with reliable IBIS, you know, the Sony IBIS with the active stabilization is really good now. You don't see any wobble. It's perfectly smooth. It looks like a shoulder cam. You know, I love that. And the autofocus is so reliable now that you can just trust it. So, yeah, so I loved the idea of Connor just having a small, teeny tiny little camera with, like, a, you know, this new 24-70 G Master, which seems to be perfect. Just him holding that, and that's it. Like, the simplicity of that. Whereas now I want to use my C70 because it has a better image than the R5. But in order to rig that up, he kind of needs an easy rig to hold it all day. So
you could do shoulder mount as well, or monopod, depending on you know, what the style is. And, you know, I, like you're saying, I do love the way that Ken does that, but it's also great to have that differentiation between channels too, where, like, you know, somebody's got this style and this taste, and, like, jumping back and forth. But yeah, what you're saying about Sony, that's probably what I miss the most living in the Canon world, is that Sony really has emphasized portability in a lot of ways. You know, just having a lot more compact lenses, where the equivalent in the Canon world is giant. Even doing photography jobs where I'm not vlogging and holding something in front of my face all day, just having it in my bag. Because, like, right now I'm packing for a big trip. We're going to be in Europe for 3 weeks, and
oh, cool, man.
Can't bring that much luggage. I got to pack as little as I can. And I'm really, you know, every inch of that bag I'm thinking about. So I don't know. I won't be able to do it in time for this, but I really want, I keep bringing this up in the podcast lately too. I really want to spend some time with Fuji for stills.
Yes.
On the last episode, yeah, totally. So Simbrash, on the last episode, he was talking about some of the Fuji setups that he has for his New York Times work. And even the kit lens, which is 24 equivalent to 24-70 and 2.8-4, like variable aperture, which is usually like deal breaker for me. I'm not going to touch a variable aperture lens or a kit lens, but it's super small. It's way smaller than the Sony even. F4 isn't that bad compared to, like, often variable apertures go to 5.6, which is brutal. But yeah, I don't know, he's showing me some samples that he took with him. Like, these look great. Like, doesn't seem to be a lens that gets in the way. And it would be a lot smaller than the R5 Canon 24-70 that I carry around with me right now.
But it is all the other things too, right? Like the handling, it's the autofocus. Like, Fuji's autofocus is nowhere near as advanced as Sony and Canon. So,
well, I would only use it as a secondary camera. Gotcha. You know, even if you see a thumbnail that says I'm going to switch, that's just clickbait. I'm not going to switch. I mean, Canon is for, like, production stuff, for jobs. Like, the R5 is the best stills camera, and the C70 is the video camera that fits best for me. So it would more be about that. You know, there's a lot of stuff we do where we're, like, kind of on the go, and a smaller camera would have a huge advantage. So that's what I'm really thinking about it for. So,
did you watch my latest video? What do you think about it?
I did. Yeah, I like it. Yeah. So let's explain it for everybody too. For anybody that missed it, is they went around NAB.
I'm trying something new. I feel like our niche really needs to jump over into what's happening in other niches. And I was thinking I needed to hop over to something else, but I feel like I found something that's sort of there. I'm still going to figure it out, but just trying to have fun with it. So basically I went around NAB and just asked people questions for money. And it was like, you know, I had a stack of 20s in my pocket, and it was just like, you know, what was the first DSLR that shot HD video? which was a trick question because the Nikon D90 is actually the
Oh,
answer.
you just gave it away. Otherwise, people would have to watch the video to find out. I would have got it right because I didn't know D90. I did think it was a Nikon, and I knew it wouldn't be the 5D because I knew it would be a trick. But I wouldn't have got the answer right.
But it was a ton of fun. It was kind of a last minute idea, and it dressed up as Frono's photo, and it was a ton of fun. So,
I mean, it's too bad he wasn't there, but
I know I was hoping you would be. I haven't met him, but yeah, I don't know. I want to get feedback from as many people as possible because I've been trying to figure out how to blend comedy and entertainment into our niche, and I feel like I've kind of failed in a lot of ways, but so I'm still trying to figure that out. So
yeah, I think it's great. I think it's like there's definitely there's so much room for more and more stuff. Like whenever people feel like they might want to get into YouTube, but a genre is saturated, it's like, you know, when I search for things so often, I'm like, oh, I'm just getting the same results every time. And there's only a limited information about this specific topic that I want to know more about. There is always so much room for most things. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think you're still able to take on a whole different angle to the whole camera world, and having it be fun is absolutely a good idea. I mean, yeah, like I think that the only thing I've seen similar to wait, I can't think of his name. The guy that does the like parody channels where he makes fun of everybody else's channels.
Camera conspiracies.
Yes, camera conspiracies. Not the same, but like that's the closest to like it's like sometimes like more comedy than information.
Yeah,
but,
totally.
You know,
well, I was trying to
I think it's great.
By it being
Also
about
Kai.
real things. Oh, Kai, Kai, Gene. I got to talk to Gene Potato Jet for the first time really on this trip. I've known him. We've kind of said hi at conferences, but I've never actually had a conversation with him. And I'm just really excited for him because I think he also has a lot of potential in this Hollywood thing with the Michael Bay Universal thing. Like, I think that's pretty exciting. So we'll see like if he can crack into that. I feel like one of the filmmaker YouTubers would eventually. And it kind of gives me seeing him crack in finally. And like, he told me that it's performing better than any other video that Universal has ever done on their TikTok account. I think it's up to like 10 million views now. And they're just like really shocked, really impressed with all of his analytics. And so I think I would imagine they're going to give him more opportunities, but seeing that he's now like a YouTuber has cracked into Hollywood interviewing Michael Bay, like I feel like it just shows that we're still in the infancy stages of this. And like, it's taken this many years for a YouTuber to kind of get to that level. But also,
I can't wait to get Michael Bay on my podcast.
Yes, you should, dude. You should. Seriously, you should pitch him.
You can connect us.
Yeah. I just think like it's just refreshing to, I don't know. It started to click for me these last couple of months. And I've got 3 videos that I've shot now that Connor and I are editing. I'm just taking a completely different approach. And I'm just taking what Mr. Beast says to do, which is, you know, spend a month on one video and just focus on making one as good as possible, which typically would mean, well, I need to make money. So if it fails, then I don't make any money. But I've entered into a partnership with Soundstripe, which I think you met some of those guys, and they're here in Nashville, great company. And so that's allowing me to afford the ability to experiment a little bit. So I'm just real excited. Like I'm kind of, my goal is to post 2 a month instead of like 5 or 6, you know.
5 or 6 is insane. I mean, I try to post 2 a month, and that is still a struggle for me. So yeah, no, I think that's a reasonable goal.
Maybe on your channel, but you do the podcast, you work with Anya, you do all sorts of commercial stuff. You're doing more than just 2 videos a month. So.
It's true. I try to stay busy, but I mean, I do the podcast so I can have a quick thing. It's like, so I can keep things coming out that take a lot less time. Well, and because I like podcasts more than YouTube videos, but that's just my personal taste.
I just think, I think there's a way to crack into sort of what Corridor has done, and the fact that like I ran into Ren and asked him to be in the video and he said yes,
totally.
like
that was
just
awesome.
tickled me. But
So
because I'm such a
meeting
huge fan,
meeting
anyways.
Ren was like my fanboy moment. Like that was the time
Totally.
that I was like,
Same.
I had butterflies in my stomach. I was like, it's Ren. That's really cool. And
It's
he's
true.
so nice. Like,
Oh my
he's
gosh, so
exactly
genuine. Yeah, and I think what they've done with the VFX Artist React and with Corridor Crew really proves it proves that there is kind of a more general audience interested in filmmaking. So
completely, yeah. Well, and look at how long their evolution was. Like, if you're ever feeling stressed out about, you're like, I still haven't cracked it, and I've been doing this for X years. It's like, how many years were they doing it? And most people are just discovering them now. Like they're still getting their new biggest videos all the time. And, a lot of people were not aware of them for the first 10 years. I mean, they've been doing this for more than 10 years. I believe the actual Corridor channel goes back to, and massively evolved over that time. Like Corridor Crew really was a straightforward vlog for a long time, where it would just be like, oh, here's what we're doing today. This is just, we're just screwing around, making jokes, playing pranks on each other. And now they evolved it into this thing where it is both entertainment and information. And obviously it's completely blown up. So finding that balance, it's like, I don't know, keep experimenting, keep finding new things. I don't think you should feel bad about trying to do something new, something you haven't seen before.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, I'm working hard over here and just trying to figure it out. It's hard to do it and make it not cringy because we have a 25 to 35-year-old majority male audience. So, and then the second skew to that is 35 to 45-year-old male audience. So, I'm trying to find that balance of like being professional and like mature enough for like that age demographic to not cringe at it. But then also you got to take into account that there is going to be a whole wave of filmmakers that are just now getting started that are watching Mr. Beast. Like, so there is going to be a whole new wave of creators over the next decade that never even watched Indie Mogul. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way I hear it said is every day there's somebody born that's never seen the Flintstones. Like the next generation always doesn't have the context that the last generation had coming into this world. So it's fine to, like, now's the time to reestablish a new one. Right. There are trends that I also like about where YouTube's been going. Like, I feel like it has gotten, well, that's 100% part of it, but also that it's gotten away from clickbait in a lot of ways. Like there's still a joke going around about, that every video needs to be titled like, you won't believe what happens when, but that just isn't really the key to success anymore. Like, that's not what the big videos are. And I don't see them on my feed nearly as much. There's a few that still seem to keep working, like, I'm sorry, or I quit, or I'm leaving. There's still a few like
I'm
you can
switching
pull out
cameras.
in an emergency, but I definitely think there's been less of it. There's a little bit more of a trend towards clarity. Like, this is what the video is about. This is what you're going to get if you watch the video. And I really appreciate that.
I'm trying to incorporate more personal aspects as well. So, and Connor and I are actually doing something. It's just weird. Like, when I was a director, I would sit down and write, a treatment for a music video or a commercial project and actually script it and do like an act 1, act 2, act 3 kind of story structure. And I've never done that for a YouTube video before, really. And so now I'm doing that. Before we shoot it, it's like, okay, here's the intro, here's the middle, here's the outro. Here's some things that we can do to cause a conflict in the middle. I'm not going to fake it, but I'm going to set myself up for failure so that when it happens, I'm sort of surprised, but not really. But then I actually have the stress of that surprise.
Corridor has talked about that, especially talked about it on the podcast, showing like just how they do it in the videos. And like good examples are they'll have challenges where it's like, all right, we need to get the best render and whoever wins gets a candy bar, and everybody acts like they're excited about a candy bar, and the viewer knows you don't give a shit. Like, it doesn't matter that everyone knows that this is that it's like kind of fake, but it's like there's stakes and they become real. A bit of a wink.
There's kind of a winky face to it.
It works. Yeah. And even that you were giving away $20 in the video, it's like, $20, it's real money, but it's not Mr. Beast. Like, it's like this good like balance of like the person's like they're excited to get it, but they don't feel like they're I don't know, devastated if they get the answer wrong.
Well, yeah, I was gonna just do dollar bills, which was kind of even more. It was almost like a meme of the Mr. Beast thing, like for $1. But the ATM only gave out 20s, so I was like, "Oh crap! I guess I'm doing 20s."
Shit!
And so, but I noticed like there was a bit of a perk up with the 20. Like $20 is significantly more than $1 in people's minds, because you can buy a T-shirt for $20. You know, so so yeah, I noticed, and that gives me a performance that I'm able to like. And then with with the Canon reps, I was like, will you talk to me for $20? And then I knew I had a stack of 20s in my pocket up to 100. And I was like, screw it. I'll just say it. Like, will you talk to me for $100? And he was like, no. And I was like, man, these guys, like those reps are another reason why I freaking like want to leave Canon, because the company is so stuck up. It's ridiculous.
So I mean, I can't say anything towards that because I never talked to them, so I don't know if they're stuck up or not, because I don't talk to anybody there. The guy at the booth I talked to was friendly, but the what I will say about Sony is like they're really great with their community. Like they are awesome at communication and responsiveness, and you know, I do think that's been part of why there's been a lot of people switching to them as well, as this feeling of that they will have more support, you know, that they're going to be listened to, and they're going to be so, you know, kind of like there's a bit more of an understanding, whereas with Canon, it's like a bit of a cold shoulder. So
it's just like, take what we're giving you and be happy about it. And by the, like, overall, I am actually happy. Like, even with all that being said, everything that I mentioned about Sony, the tweets that I've been posting, like getting people's feedback, like at the end of the day, the image I'm getting out of this thing is so good. The built-in ND is great. The size, the form factor, I really like it. I'm hoping that there's a rumor that there's going to be an APS-C RF body this year, the R7.
Should have been a long time ago.
So if that's the case, then it would be wonderful if they made a couple of APS-C RF lenses, which then now I could have like a native, maybe 24-70 equivalent, which would be cool.
That'd be really cool. And it could be smaller.
Exactly.
Are you listening, Canon? Don't make it big, please.
Well, I'm just worried that they're going to do like a crappy kit lens and that's it. Like an 18 to 135, 3.5 to 5.6. Yeah.
I mean, I want them to be like Fuji in the smaller space. Like Fuji makes these smaller APS-C lenses. They're a little more affordable, and they're just as good. You're not compromising quality, you know. And same with some of the Sonys, not all of them, but you know, some of the smaller Sonys are great.
Yeah, Sony just made that wonderful little I think it's an 18 to 55 2.8 or something like that. Like they're still putting money into the APS-C, you know, system. Yeah. Anyways, it's fine. It's whatever.
No, I have another before we're done. I just need to touch on virtual production, because that was like the biggest change in the universe that doesn't necessarily apply to us today, but like I just feel like
I'm excited about it.
If we don't talk about it this year, I'd look back on this episode and be like, wait a minute, we didn't talk about virtual production. I mean, so did you get a chance to check out like the View booth or their party or anything?
Yeah, I you know, as you saw in the video, I did ride the little motorcycle, so I got to experience
you
that.
Really got to try it out. I didn't get on the motorcycle, but it looks awesome.
Yeah, and then I talked to the guys who are running it, who actually work there, and I got to hear what they're doing, what they're up to. There's actually there's a competing company here in Nashville. In fact, View is they just built a studio here, which is amazing. So they're here in Nashville, and then their competing company, I'm friends with the owner, and that's actually the sticker right here. So I've been able to experience a volume, like, and see the software with Unreal Engine and everything, and it really is quite amazing. I was basically Unreal is a gaming engine, and they're using it for this VR stuff. And I didn't realize this, but like the background on these screens is actually just a rendered like game, basically. And so it's actually a living, breathing 3D model with even like AI characters walking around. And so he was mentioning how there's this like motorcycle setup at NAB where you sit on the motorcycle and the camera like pans around you and it looks like you're in a futuristic Tron kind of city. And he said that it's actually different like he just has a virtual camera that goes through a certain path, but the 3D environment is actually a living, breathing game. So, sometimes he would see somebody walking across the lens that wasn't there previously, or like he said there was like a bug in it and he saw like a car just flipping in outer space, just like some sort of weird bug with the software. So I didn't even realize that. So I think that's amazing. And that means that you really could do like live streaming with this. I could see Twitch gamers like going crazy with this kind of thing, where you really are actually putting yourself in a game, but it's also a film and it's like really well shot. And I don't know, it's just like the cloud, Frame.io stuff. This again is like cutting edge of filmmaking, and we still don't even know what's possible with this, but the lighting with it looks so good because now we're not using a green screen anymore. We're actually using a real background with, the actual studios have screens on the sides and on top of you and even in front of you. So the environment that you're in virtually is lighting you. So you can have natural fall off on the corners and on the backs. And like, obviously if you've been following this technology, the Mandalorian, show kind of really popularized it in the mainstream.
It's the showcase for it.
It's just been, and it's still getting better. Like, that's old technology now. So
what I came away really wondering about is how are we going to get this to a more consumer level? Because like it's cool that Disney spent $100 million on their studio, but I'm not going to get access to that. And I know none of this is like coming to mainstream anytime soon. I mean, it's gonna be years, but at least to a point of like, where every city has a bunch of these. I walked away thinking like, well, how much would it be to build? Like, how big of a loan could I take out? Could I build one of these? And
I think we're talking like $1 million for a big one, but
well, yeah, for a big one, but how much for a not big one? So I actually couldn't really find a clear answer. There are some kits that are, and if anybody has the clear answer, let me know, because I could definitely stand to be corrected. But the PC hardware side, including the required tracking gear, I saw that there's packages for starting about 10,000 for that. So that kind of handles your Unreal and matching it with your camera movement. Doesn't give you anything to move the camera or screens in the background, which are kind of important. That's what it was really missing from being able to figure out like how much would this really cost, is like, how do you get a TV that big? Because you could just go buy an 80-inch TV and it would actually work with that. You can do it with TV screens, but then the amount of movement you have is pretty limited. So YouTubers would actually be able to do that kind of stuff like relatively simply, but it wouldn't be that interesting you might as well just play a video behind you. So to get, something that has some space big enough to like build a set, I have no idea. I could not find clear answers to what that. I know what you would buy, like they're built out into panels that are, maybe like 2 or 3 feet by like square, and you stack them together and they become one kind of seamless big thing. I guess
you could do it with a rear projector, right? Like you could probably get away with it with like a decent rear projection.
So I guess that's been around for a while. That's how I think Oblivion was done, the Tom Cruise movie from a little while back, which looked great. I mean, it was really nice, but it's and does seem much simpler. So maybe that is like the budget way, but then you don't get that lighting, right? Because the light's not.
It's not really reflecting heavily
in the same way. Yeah, it's a bit different. But I don't know, maybe there's. And I also wonder, it seems like, well, there's got to be a reason that we didn't see rear projection versions everywhere at NAB. Like that's not why, that's not what's being built. So I wonder if there's a reason. Anyway, If anybody wants to tell me how much it costs to build that, I'd love to find out.
Well, you can definitely do it with a green screen and put a tracker on your camera and basically record live, motion tracked 3D green screen. But obviously, it's not a volume like that. You're not getting the light fall off, which is really the trick. And
well,
I
think full virtual production,
I've
had like Matt Workman's been on the podcast a couple times before, but he's like the one to follow. So just follow him on Instagram because he's just constantly posting what he's doing. But he's just built a green screen studio in his basement, and he's bought like the body motion trackers and every bit of tracking you could hope for. and he can just fully act out those scenes that are then done by Avatar using, pre-built software that he's just kind of tweaking and modifying. And
it just gives me chills, man. When I was a kid, like this is such a dream, isn't it? That we do this for our job. Isn't it crazy? Like, I don't know about you, but when I was a young boy, I guess, is 13 a boy? I guess, 13 is really
younger
when I
boy
started.
than we are now.
Yeah, our wives would definitely call us big boys, right? So at least that's what my wife calls me.
I'll start calling you that too.
But no, like there was this show on AMC that was like a behind the scenes, and I remember seeing how they made Titanic. That shows you my age, right? Like that was new at the time, and it was just so fascinating. And then obviously Star Wars, and when DVDs started becoming a thing and you could buy the bonus discs, and I don't know about you, but I was such a Lord of the Rings fan. I bought, my dad and I bought
those behind the scenes were significant.
Oh my gosh. It was really significant because that was the first time I think they used AI to develop 3D creatures. I think that was one of the big things that ILM did for that film. They basically just created a full like robot army of orcs and all these things. So they had their own, kind of their own mind, a mind of their own when it came to fighting each other, which I thought was kind of cool. But yeah, all that stuff growing up, like I just dreamed about it, and now we get to like essentially talk about it and experience it firsthand. And like that's when somebody asked me at NAB, like, so do you want to make films? Like, do you want to be a filmmaker? I'm like, no, not at all. Like, I actually love being kind of a host, talking about it. Like, I kind of want to just talk to the experts and learn from them and make it entertaining in its own way. But like, I went straight to those bonus features on DVDs, and I still feel like I'm doing that now on YouTube, just kind of talking about the bonus features,
Yeah, you're like, I want to host the extra DVD. Yeah, no, I absolutely love this, and I think it's a loss that we don't have them in the same way anymore.
It really is.
I think maybe the best balance that I am envious of is the balance that Corridor has struck, where they are making these short films, applying the techniques that they're talking about and learning, and then also doing these quicker videos where they're just talking about it. Then they go back and they like make something more complete. And I just think that like that's really fun, but that takes resources, totally. Right? Like it's helpful that they started as a team and they've kind of come up together and they can always rely on each other. They have that infrastructure built up at this point so that they can do more. That it's challenging for all of us individuals to just jump into something like that. But
it's true.
I've seen a few YouTubers mention that they're going to work on some longer format stuff coming up. I know Maddie Hapoya was saying that as well. So
nice. Do you ever like connect with all the Canadian creators and stuff? Like, I know you're in a different area.
Not in person.
But like
the DP Review TV guys are local, and the Camera Store TV as well. I mean, they're around here, but almost everyone else is East Coast, so I haven't seen most of them in person ever. I met Jesse Driftwood first because he came by an event like right when I was like getting into YouTube, and then the pandemic happened and I didn't see anybody. So I haven't met most of them in person.
What's kind of, I know we're at the close here of this show, and I'm curious, like for you, like, and I'm sure a lot of the viewers that are watching this right now would agree. Like, I look to you as like one of the top dogs in our field, and I freaking love every video you make. Your storytelling, your delivery, the way you edit, the way you shoot is just top notch. I aspire to be Tyler Stallman, to be honest. What is your like ultimate goal here with your channel? Like, have you had a sense of clarity? Do you feel like you're still experimenting as well? Like, what's kind of your current North Star, if you will?
I don't have clarity on it. It's definitely been evolving, and I think I would be doing better if I had that target in mind. It's so often just driven by what I'm into at that moment, which is not good for the channel. Like, it's not ideal to be like, I'm really into color grading right now, so I'm going to just be watching DaVinci tutorials all the time and try to find a way to fit that in. But that's so often what it is. It's like, it's just driven by what I'm interested in, and I know that doesn't. That's not ideal because other people aren't on the same path at the same time. So,
but I'm interested in what you're interested in, to be honest. So
Well, yeah, we definitely seem to have a lot of overlap with that. And that's always been my philosophy. It's like, look, if I'm into this, somebody else is going to be into it too. And hopefully we have enough in common that you'll enjoy multiple videos. So I don't know. That's my whole theory, which is not very advanced, but great time to say, what else have you been doing and where can people watch it? And what are all the best places for people to follow you, Dave?
Yeah, just Dave Mays on YouTube, formerly the Kinotika channel. Connor and I, like I said, are working hard there. That are taught in this book, the YouTube formula.
He's reaching.
Which I highly recommend.
Oh, there's a formula.
Yeah. Have you read this book, Tyler?
Tell me there's a formula. No, I haven't read it. I don't read books.
I don't read books either, but they just released an audiobook this week. So this is written by a guy named Daryl. Yeah, this is written by a guy named Daryl Eves.
I know who that guy is. Yeah.
He is kind of the ultimate YouTube educator. And he works with Mr. Beast and a lot of huge creators and has billions of views under his belt. So he definitely knows his stuff. And I feel like the review space it serves a need, and I feel like I benefited from that early on. Basically, it's, this is the new blah, blah, blah. It does X, Y, Z and da, 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 which is great. That serves its own need. And I love doing that still because I'm passionate about gear and stuff. And I want to educate and kind of input my own thoughts and my own opinions. But that isn't necessarily what is in this book and what is currently blowing up on YouTube. I think, again, we've brought up Corridor multiple times because I feel like they're really one of the few teams that are doing it right in our niche. Parker Walbuck is also experimenting and seemingly having some great success as well with his pro versus amateur series. Basically gamifying things and making things entertaining and just having fun with it. It's YouTube maybe 3.0, 4.0. I don't know what 0.0 we're on, but it seems like right now YouTube really is swallowing up television. And so therefore, proper storytelling and good game show ideas are seemingly working well on YouTube at the moment. So I love that. It turns out I was a magician for 8 years before I did any of this. So it's kind of, the timing hasn't been better. I've had the 4 or 5 years of experience now on YouTube. I'm ready to transition into a new thing. I'm working hard, scripting and coming up with ideas and spending a lot of my own money to make it happen. But I am very passionate about it and
I think
excited.
It's going to pay off. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that you're reinventing yourself and finding new ways. And I'm definitely going to hit the audiobook YouTube formula. He was on, so I follow
he owns Vid Summit.
The podcast. Oh, okay. Right. So he was on Video Creators, which is the YouTube technique podcast I listen to. But an audiobook.
Is that Tim Schmoyer?
Exactly what I need. Yes.
I'm good friends with Tim. He's a good friend. He's awesome.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. Yeah. The thing is, it's hard to find advice that doesn't feel scammy, where it's like, oh, you know what you're talking about. Yeah. And so once you find someone you trust and you're like, oh, you actually understand this, it's incredibly helpful. And
yes.
Tim's always been a good resource for that. So
he has 6 or 7 kids. It's insane. He's the ultimate.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. And he must have more energy in the day to get through the day than I do. But
yeah, I call him regularly with kid advice because he's
oh, cool, man.
Of all people, he would know. So
yeah, no kidding. He's got the experience.
But anyways.
Cool. Thanks again, Dave. I'll invite you back.
Thank you.
Very soon. Let's catch up and see where your
Absolutely.
YouTube journey goes.